Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Looks like we may have 3 additional blue states in the very near future. Looks like Florida, Missouri, and Texas could be turning blue at some point in the near future as the Delta variant. Now, those 3 states account for 40% of all of the new coronavirus cases in the U.S. And guess which states are the highest ones who are not being vaccinated? So this could be, this could be one of those moments where you go, we're just getting rid of some of the dead weight. Dead weight, is that a right way of putting that? Now, interesting. There's a guy who's running for Congress in Texas, a guy named Ronnie Jackson. You may remember Ronnie Jackson. He was Donald Trump's drunken lawyer. Remember him? Ronnie is very angry at the news media for not asking Democrats if they're vaccinated. Now, understand, all of the Democrats are vaccinated. All of them. That's one of those things that, they're the ones who are saying, hey, everyone should do this. In fact, all of them probably have pictures of themselves getting the shots. But leave it to the folks who are really good at deflecting. Leave it to those who are really good at playing the victim. My favorite one, the senator from North Dakota, saying that the HIPAA laws preclude him from praying for people who are sick. What in the ever-loving blankety blank is he talking about? Again, no one plays the victim quite like a Republican. I mean, it really, you have to give them really, really big amounts of credit for having the stones to say something stupid like, I can't pray for somebody because HIPAA says I can't. Wow, just nuts. But here, like I said, you have the states of Florida, Missouri, Texas, leading the pack. Florida way out ahead. So Florida could become a blue state sooner than later. And look, first DeSantis was saying, we're staying the course. We're not going to Fauci, Florida. Now kind of backing up a little bit, kind of like Fox News. For the longest time's hoax, go away. Basically the Trump line now coming out pretty strongly going, hey, our advertisers are saying we're probably losing money. We better save our people because that's who buys the stuff that advertises on our channel. They've even kind of done a nice flip-flop. And I got thinking about that today. Do you remember 2004? For me, 2004 was an interesting presidential election because that was the year Republicans really put their stake in the ground on flip-flopping. In fact, if you remember the Republican convention, there were 2 props that the GOP brought out, or as I'm now calling them, the WWGOP. The props that they brought out for their shtick was, one, the disgraceful Purple Heart Band-Aids. If you remember that, because they were mocking John Kerry's service. They were mocking John Kerry's Purple Hearts. They had those cute little Band-Aids, and they were Purple Heart, and everyone was waving them, kind of like the people in Afghanistan who had risked their lives to vote and got ink on their fingers. Same kind of thing. That's what they were running around with. But they also had flip-flops. They had lots of flip-flops, and they had John Kerry's name written all over them. They're going, hey, look, here, flip-flops. Because they were the party of, we've got our stake in the ground, and we're true believers. And yet, every time I turn around, the GOP position seems to be changing. Remember they used to be the party of personal responsibility? Do you remember that? You remember that whole old school idea of a man's got to be responsible for himself? And in fact, you go back to 1993 when Hillary Clinton came out with her health care plan. You had Republicans going to the mat for their plan. In fact, there was a bill introduced by Rhode Island Republican John Chafee that you may remember looked exactly like Obamacare. In fact, Mitt Romney passed it while he was governor of Massachusetts. But back then, it called for everyone to buy insurance. Everyone had to have personal responsibility. You had to do it yourself. No government's going to help you. And there was a mandate. In fact, they mandated that employers would be fined if they didn't offer qualified health care plans. Again, this is 1993, whole different breed of Republican. You haven't gotten to the Newt Gingrich contract on America folks yet. You really haven't gotten to the Tom DeLay folks. You haven't gotten to, well, the crazy that we have now. But they were changing. And now look, even back then, you had 19 Republican senators saying, yeah, we're on board with John Chafee's thing. We think everyone should have health care. In fact, Richard Nixon first introduced a national health care plan. So Republicans used to believe the power of government to help people and make their lives better. Now it's just a repeal and replace with nothing. In fact, you go back to Chafee's bill, subsidize people, the low-income folks, cover pre-existing conditions, the cap's gone, all those things that kind of sound eerily familiar to the dreaded Obamacare. And look, I spent years railing on this because Obamacare is what the Heritage Foundation and John Chafee put forth. It is that plan. This is the insurance companies administering this stuff. It's a privatized, universal kind of plan. Make sure everybody has insurance, but it's done by the private sector because they firmly believe in the private sector being able to cash in and make lots of money. The one change that I did find is Obama said, no, we're not going to let you, put all kinds of money in your pocket. We're going to cap it at about 85%. So you're going to spend 85 cents of every dollar on actual health care. One of the really good things in there. But Republicans used to believe this stuff. They used to, they used to believe in personal responsibility. They used to believe in the police. I look at what's happening right now. They used to believe in institution. They used to believe in law and order. Because understand, conservatism was always about protecting institutions. It was always about the longevity of our institutions and having some loyalty to our nation. Now I'm looking at this flop. They're going, well, maybe not so much. Now we're okay with people storming our Capitol to stop the certification of a presidential election. We're okay with that. Now understand. They view this as a political game. This isn't about love of country. And even though they wave their country first, their country first banners, it's not country first, it's Trump first. It's save their political skin first. Country way down below. Because I'm looking at the games that are going on around this select committee that's going to kick off next week. And look, I said yesterday, and I stand by my words, even though most of my liberal friends are no, we should have thrown all the Republicans off. They shouldn't get a voice. That's not how we do things in this country. I'm a firm believer in due process. I'm a firm believer in hearing all sides of things. And look, I would like nothing more than for McCarthy to be able to put all of his kooks and cranks and morons on that committee and have them ask questions of the witnesses so that the American people can judge for themselves. Because I tend to believe that the American people would look at a Jim Jordan going after a police officer who fought for his life on that day to protect Jim Jordan. I would love to hear Jim Jordan attack him. And I would love to hear what the American people think of that. I would more like to hear Liz Cheney, remind him that it was his fault that January 6th happened. But, again, we're going to find out how this is played out. My fear, and I said this yesterday, is that this select committee then, because, the GOP has a sizable microphone in Fox News, that this becomes a hyper-partisan thing where it shouldn't be. This should be old school Republican before they flip-flopped to, hey, let's destroy our government. This should have been saving institutions. This should be, and look, I'm interested to see if there will be Republicans who step forward and go against leadership, because evidently McCarthy's not going to seat anyone. There's talk of Adam Kinzinger coming, of Nancy Pelosi asking him on there. That could happen. Will you get 4 other Republicans? Will you get 5 Republicans to come and fill those seats against leadership wishes? I don't know. We're going to see how that plays out. I would love to think that it's possible, but in this day and age, not so much. Because again, first, loyalty to your political skin. Second, loyalty to party. And then country, way down the list. But like I said, I spent a lot of time today thinking about what Republicans used to believe and then how they've not believed it. Fiscal responsibility, for instance. You pay your bills. They used to believe that, yet all during the Obama years, all we saw was how they obstructed our ability to raise the debt ceiling after they had already spent the money. And now they're talking about doing it again. But during the Trump years, wasn't a problem. As my friend Bob Ney says, in the old days, the debt ceiling vote was a yawn vote. You went in, you already spent the money. There's no debating this. You went in, you made the vote, you raised the debt ceiling because you spent the money, and you went to lunch. But this current Republican Party, they're all over the place. I respected old school conservatives. I did. I respected people who said, no, we want smaller government. We want local control. We want to pay our bills. We want lower taxes so that, workers and families can keep more of their money. On some level, I respected that. But what they've turned into is a party that uses the heavy hand of government for their ideological aims, for their culture war aims, a party that doesn't really even show any shame about how irresponsible they are fiscally. I mean, the tax bill that they rammed through back in 2017, 2018, you just kind of go, where's that fiscal responsibility? Oh yeah, it flew away. Because they had the opportunity to put us deeper into debt and hand a bunch of money to their donors and to the very wealthy and big corporations, which is their one of their first loyalties. And the thing is we as people are finally waking up to the reality is that these schemes don't work. They've never worked. Every time we've cut taxes on the wealthy, we've seen deficits go up. There hasn't been more money coming into the government. There haven't been better job opportunities for people. They just have more money. We have someone like Jeff Bezos who's able to go and play with his toys. And then we're supposed to give him credit for donating $200 million to organizations that I think will do good work. I don't have a problem with that. But you play in space for 10 minutes, you come down and you have your little PR stunt of, oh, here's some money to kind of paper it over. I struggle with that. But we did that. We gave him that kind of wealth. And oh, by the way, we're going to pay for it because that's one of the things that the tax code allows, that we get to pay for. So yay, more of that. So I keep coming back to this idea. When will the Republican Party return to the party that they once were? The party of hard work, the party of personal responsibility, the party of mind your own business. I was thinking about this today, and I've had people tell me that, there's still the party of Reagan. And I'm going, I don't think Ronald Reagan, call me strange, I don't think Ronald Reagan would have thrown a hissy fit if he lost an election and called for his minions to storm the Capitol to stop the certification of that election. I don't think that would have happened. I don't think he would have spent months, making up false statements. I don't think he would have spent all that time lying about how he was cheated and still doing it. And at least I hope the party at that era, if he did, would have said, no, stop. Now, I find it interesting that Bob Dole actually came out this week and said, hey, Trump lost. He says, I was a Trumper. He lost fair and square. Can't figure out why Rudy Giuliani is going around making stuff up because he didn't bring anything into the courtroom. Basically what I've been saying all along. But now you got Bob Dole saying it. Will it matter to the Republican base? No, because Bob Dole is that old school. He's not the new, whatever fits the narrative day Republican, the Winston Smith Republican, where every day we change what was done yesterday. Because you're watching it right now. You're watching the Republican Party in certain realms, and especially the mouthpieces in the media, kind of now turning, going, well, you should get vaccinated. You now actually see Mitch McConnell coming out and saying something as where he was gone for most of the pandemic. It's a weird moment, but it's not unpredictable. This is who the Republican Party has turned into. And you really have to be in awe at their ability to, on a dime, change positions. And on a dime, be all around any position all the time. Except the ones that, obviously, they know are the most divisive to keep us pitted against one another. So it's going to be interesting to see, to me, over the next couple of weeks, one, how this select committee goes about its business and what the Republican response is going to be. And look, how much of a kangaroo court that they're going to be able to convene. I've said from the beginning, I'm someone who believes in more speech, not less. I'm someone who said that I believe in an institution. I believe in due process. Going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with this. Because understand, this is what they wanted, I believe. They wanted Pelosi to make this decision, which is why they put Banks and Jordan on the committee. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh is going to be here to share some of his thoughts. Stick around.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day a bomb rocked the Preparedness Day Parade in San Francisco, killing 10 and injuring at least 40. The Chamber of Commerce and the newly formed Law and Order Committee organized the parade to shore up support for war production and eventual entry into World War I. But isolationist sentiment in San Francisco remained strong. Anti-war activists prepared pamphlets and protests for the march. Many trade unionists were opposed to entry into the war. Some considered the parade a response to the combative longshoremen strike raging on the docks for weeks. San Francisco had been a strong union town for years, known for strikes and labor disputes. 1916 was an election year, and already the city had been rocked by a number of strikes. Business interests launched an open shop campaign and began targeting labor radicals. They found their scapegoats in labor leaders Tom Mooney and Warren Billings, who were framed and convicted for the bombings. Journalist Carl Nolte points out that Mooney and his assistant had been trying to organize workers at the city's largest streetcar company, United Railroads. He notes their convictions were based on perjured testimony and doctored evidence. Incredibly, one of the prosecution's star witnesses wasn't even in town that day. But the convictions served to vilify labor militants as terrorists. Fremont Older, editor of 2 local newspapers, discovered the frame-up evidence. He and many others, including Upton Sinclair and Clarence Darrow, campaigned for years to free the 2 men. They were finally released after 22 years in 1939. The actual bombers were never found, though some have speculated that anarchists of the Galleanist movement were likely responsible. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on a day when there are lots of fun stories, this one caught my attention in a big way. A guy named Tommy Fisher, his company evidently spent $30 million building 3 miles of border wall between the U.S. and Mexico there on in the Rio Grande Valley. Now he wants somebody to buy it. I'm going, wait a second. Explain to me what gave you the idea that, hey, I'm just going to build some wall and, maybe the former guy would have bought it from me. What a stupid decision. But hey, he has his wall and maybe he can charge admission. I don't know. My first thought was, did he get permits? And who owns the wall? Very, very strange. But here again, do what you got to do. Anyway, welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So clearly the big news of the day, the select committee next week. And as I've said, I think that Nancy Pelosi made a mistake. I've gotten a lot of pushback on this. I'm here to share some thoughts on, well, did she make a mistake? Did she make the right move by not letting the gyms on the committee? That's why I've asked our good friend Joe Walsh to come back and talk with us. Joe is a former Republican congressman from Illinois, Tea Party guy, and currently host of the F Silence podcast. Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I love to talk to you. How are you?
I'm good. Let's start with the guy with the wall. What do you think of the guy who built 3 million? He brought 3 miles of wall.
God bless him. Good luck. It's his own mess. I will say this, and look, Rick, it's a fun thing to have fun with that story. We got an issue at our border.
We do.
And I think you and I would agree with that.
We do.
And I'll tell you what, Washington, D.C., I'll tell you what, Rick, Congress and the president ought to take Rick Smith and Joe Walsh, fly the two of us out to Washington, put us in a conference room for the weekend, and you and I, from different perspectives, we should come up with our comprehensive immigration reform plan, because we need to do something.
No, we need it desperately. And this is in the situation that we're in, with this polar opposite views, nothing ever gets done and the situation just festers and gets worse. But here's the thing. I look at this guy and look, I don't know who told him to do it. I don't know where he thought he was getting $30 million from, but that's on him.
I think he was banking on Trump winning.
I think so.
And somehow Trump was going to...
I don't know how that was going to happen, but...
Yeah. I think that's what he was banking on.
Yeah, well, you roll the dice. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. Now, my thought first when I read it, the first thought I had, did he get permits? Because if he didn't, is he going to have to spend $30 more million to take it down?
Well, and again, I should know this, Rick, but technically the 3 miles he built, is it on his land? Where is it?
It's in the Rio Grande Valley. It didn't say who owned it. He didn't say he owned it. It's just it's supposedly the most traveled border crossing point.
Got it.
And look, we got to do something. And we could spend days going through what we think that is.
And we don't, and you do, but generally we don't. The media doesn't talk enough about this issue. But every single day we've got good, decent people walking and streaming across that border. This is a real issue that we got to wrap our arms around.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I go back to, you go back to the 70s where we didn't have, really hard. My wife tells me she grew up on an avocado ranch in Southern California, and you had people who the border was more porous. People came back and forth. They would come here to work during the working season, and then they would go home because they didn't want to live here. They wanted to go home and support their families, but they needed the income, and they were able to go back and forth. And there's part of me that goes, if we had a different system that would allow people to come do the work that we need done, like working on the farms.
Absolutely.
And let them go home, that you wouldn't have the kind of problem we have. My problem with our current immigration system is we're pushing people into the shadows. We're making them desperate. We're making them exploitable, and it's pulling us all down.
True. But, Rick, and I agree, we need to get back to that where we can allow that. I get that, where people come here, they work, they go back home. I get all of that. The problem is we do have people coming into this country illegally, and they're just staying, and they're permanent. And you're right, they try to live in the shadows, but ultimately this is a burden on all of us. And I know you agree with me. You need a border. You're not a country if you don't have a border. It's not a border if you don't enforce it. So that's got to be part of any kind of immigration package we try to work toward.
Yeah, you've got to secure your borders in a way, but building a 30-foot wall when we've got shovels and ladders, again, I don't know that that's the answer either.
You would think in today's day and age with technology and even manpower,
right?
You wouldn't need a physical barrier.
Now, we also know that and I didn't want to spend all of our time talking about immigration because that's not what I wanted to do, but we also know that a lot of people come here, the old-fashioned way, on planes and on trains and in automobiles, like the John Candy movie.
And they overstay their visas.
Absolutely.
I mean, again, I tend to be a hawk on the border, but the vast majority of people who are in this country illegally have just come, as you say, planes, trains, and automobiles, and they've overstayed their visas and they're staying here. That system is broken as well.
No, I agree. And there's so many things we could fall into the rabbit hole on this issue for days. But I got to get your thoughts on Pelosi's decision not to let the gyms on the select committee.
I think it's a bad move. I served with Jim Jordan. I know him. I don't know him anymore because, to me, I don't even recognize this guy. Him and Jim Banks, I think she should have kept them on there because these two gyms would have revealed themselves to be the absolute unserious clowns, uninterested in getting at any truth. I think Pelosi and the Democrats' search for the truth about January 6th would have been better served having them on the committee, and I think exposing the hypocrisy of the Republicans would have been better served if they were on the committee. She gave Kevin McCarthy, Rick, a perfect out here.
Yeah, see, now a lot of my liberal friends are taking me to the woodshed over this, and I'm going, no, I wanted Jim Jordan on that committee, for one, so I could see Liz Cheney go, you did this again, like she did supposedly on January 6th, but also so that the American people can see the questioning that comes out and the kind of shenanigans that they're going to pull. Instead, now what I think is going to happen, and you can disagree with me, is Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are going to go through with their committee, and they're going to do all the serious work that comes into it, but you're going to end up with the Fox News Republicans doing their sideshow and their dog and pony show and spinning an alternative narrative along with this. Right. They've excluded us.
Yes, and what Pelosi did just made their case easier.
Right.
Because now, again, Kevin McCarthy's an idiot. I served with him. He's an absolute tool. But even he looked kind of righteous indignation yesterday. She gave him a bone. Now it's so easy for the Republicans to say, as McCarthy said, this is a sham committee, and half the country now will ignore the results. I think what it'll do, what happened yesterday, is going to energize the Republican base big time.
So let me ask you this, because this is your world, and this is why I wanted to have you on to talk about this, because I have some of my liberal friends who are going to go, no, people are going to watch, and they're going to be so moved by the testimony that they have to come around. Now, I understand Trump's base, they're probably not even going to watch. They're in the bag. Their hope is that there are still some moderate to reasonable Republicans who may have voted for Trump, but didn't like his antics and may have voted for Biden, and now you're going to be able to pull them over. Is there any movement you see politically going forward with this committee in the way that now it's going forward? No,
I think that die would. The minute the Republicans rejected the bipartisan commission a number of weeks ago,
right,
the die was cast. And I'm not talking about the cult or the base. I hear from them every day. But I also hear from independents and reasonable Republicans every day. They will not pay one lick of attention to this committee. The only people who will pay attention to this committee is like people who watch MSNBC. It's an absolute shame. I think Pelosi made a mistake even having a select committee. The minute the Republicans said no to a bipartisan commission, I think Biden and Pelosi should have grabbed George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and they should have led a blue ribbon commission on January 6th. The minute the commission was gone, I just think a select committee is only the Democrats care about it. It's a shame, but only the Democrats care about it.
So no matter what comes out of this, you don't think it's going to move the needle?
No. And again, I want to emphasize this to your listeners. It's not just the cult and the base. Mainline Republicans and center-right people are not going to pay attention to this select committee. It's too bad, but that's a fact.
Yeah, and for me, I wasn't all that thrilled with the commission because of the deadlines and some of the things that they had in. But that was the better alternative to this, I think.
Yes, and again, I love the idea of a blue ribbon commission. Obama, Bush, but they wouldn't have had subpoena power. I get it. Rick, the Benghazi Select Committee. No matter what they would have come up with, a big chunk of the country wouldn't have moved them. That's going to be the case with this. And by the way, Rick, an utter shame, because our democracy was attacked 6 months ago, and we can't even investigate it in a bipartisan fashion. And that's all because the Republicans don't give a damn. They don't want the American people to know the truth.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that just is on a certain level kind of shocking, but on another level just predictable. It is what it is. And I look at someone like McCarthy, who just a week after the riot happened, came out and said on the House floor that the president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action of President Trump. And you go, where's that guy? Where's the guy who on January 6th got into an expletive-laden back and forth with Donald Trump? Where's that guy?
Well, that guy doesn't exist. McCarthy was forced to say what he said early on after January 6th. The McCarthy I know, and I ought to be careful, but the McCarthy I know, Rick, has no core. He's like a hollow guy. He has no philosophy. Kevin McCarthy, and he's a master at this, he's all about the acquisition of power. He would step all over his mother to become speaker, and that's all he's focused on right now. And Democrats don't want to hear this, but this kerfuffle over how to investigate January 6th is really firing up the Republican base.
Oh, yeah.
Democrats need to be concerned about that.
No, and this is one of my arguments, that you're going to give them the red meat that they need at the time that they're going to need. This is going to go on for a couple of months. This could lead into next year. This will most certainly be an election year thing, especially because I think the Republican machine, the conservative media has done not you obviously, but the conservative media has done a pretty good job of trying to change the narrative that this wasn't the horrible attack that I think you and I agree on, that this was just, hey, it was just a normal day, just tourists.
And in a weird way, Rick, from the beginning, the Democrats were in a bad spot, because the Republicans had no interest in playing ball from the beginning. You're right. There was about a week after January 6th where McConnell and McCarthy and everybody was so blown away by what happened. But then they took stock, and they heard from their base. And week by week by week, the Republican Party moved away from caring about January 6th. And so by the time they voted on a bipartisan commission weeks ago, the Republicans had already decided they're not going to play ball. The Democrats were in a tough spot.
Yeah, but now going forward, you're a messaging guy. I think Jim Jordan yesterday came out with what the plan is going to be. They're going to attack Pelosi and the Democrats who are in control. They're in the majority. They oversee the Capitol Police. The argument is going to be Nancy Pelosi didn't protect us.
And they're going to do that, and they're going to say This is all the Democrats are focused on. They're focused on what happened 7 months ago. What about inflation? What about crime? What about the border? Biden's ignoring all of these things, the deficit and all this stuff. And all they want to talk about is January 6th. So the Republicans are going to use that as well.
And as I've said, I think they have a bigger microphone.
Oh, bull. Well, they've got the conservative media world that I come from, but you got CNN, you got MSNBC, you've got, I mean, the mainstream media generally tilts left, but they're just all over the map on this. You're right in that the Fox News world and conservative talk radio, they're all singing from the same page.
Yeah, they're all in the same church and they're all in the same hymnal. And all of the quote unquote, liberal media, I don't see the liberal bias. They're all over the map. They're just wandering, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and Rick, again, my plea to your Democratic listeners listening to us right now: history says Republicans are going to take back the House next year.
Yep.
Redistricting says the Republicans will take back the House. The only way that will change is if Democrats get off their ass and defy history and actually come out and vote in the midterm.
Yeah, but here again, you look at the things that are going on in states around the country where they're erecting all of these barriers. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you we should be out there getting people registered to vote and overcoming those barriers. But the Republicans are doing everything they can do to make sure that they have the advantage next time around as well.
More people voted than ever before last year. There's no reason that for a midterm election that doesn't happen again. And the one good thing the Democrats have going for them, Rick, is Donald Trump. Republicans wish that Trump would just go away for 2 years and play golf, but he's not going to do that. He wants to make himself the story in 2022. Remember, the Democrats' greatest get-out-the-vote tool is Donald Trump. So if he keeps his mug out there for the next year and a half, that will bring Democrats out.
Yeah, it will, but it's the greatest tool for the Republicans as well. I mean, you did have the most people vote last time around.
Yes, I agree, but 81 million people voted for Joe Biden, and they did not vote for Joe Biden because he's Joe Biden. The vast majority of those people voted against something, against an unfit psychopath. That's got to happen again.
Let's hope. But Joe, I appreciate the thoughts. I appreciate your time as always. Good talking with you, my friend.
Keep slugging, Rick. Thanks.
Our good friend Joe Walsh. Make sure you check out his podcast, the F Silence Podcast. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. A group of labor leaders and members of the Working Men's Party met in St. Louis. They were there because of the labor strike that had swept the nation. The United States was in the grip of a terrible depression. Railroad workers in Martinsburg, West Virginia, had walked off the job after their wages were slashed. The popular uprising of workers spread to cities like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Chicago. Railroad tracks were ripped out of the ground. Workers rallied and protested, and workers from other industries joined the March of Labor. In St. Louis, the response of workers was even more radical. Many of the workers in the city were German immigrants. Some remembered the working class uprisings of 1848 in Germany. At the St. Louis meeting, they declared the start of the St. Louis Commune, a takeover of the city by working people. They called for the 8-hour day and the end of child labor. On both sides of the Mississippi River, both in St. Louis and East St. Louis, workers began a general strike. Railroad traffic was stopped. It was the first general strike in U.S. history. The workers had taken over St. Louis. 3,000 federal troops were amassed along with thousands of gun thugs paid for by the railroad tycoons. The workers' rebellion was crushed. The strike committee was arrested, and at least 18 people were killed. Across the nation, 100 people lost their lives in the Great Upheaval of 1877. City leaders scrambled to build armories so they could quickly arm troops in case the workers rose up again. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
It's going to be interesting to see where my next guest comes down on the Nancy Pelosi decision. And look, I there's part of me that I understand it. I understand why you wouldn't want those two clowns on the committee, because you're going to pursue truth and we're going to pursue honesty and all of that stuff. And you don't want people who were part of the treason on the committee. I get that. It's just the messaging that's coming out of it for me. But here to maybe set me straight, I've asked our good friend David Yankovich to come talk with us. David is a digital strategist, one of the best in the country, and also a friend of the program. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, good talking to you again.
So take me to the woodshed. Where am I wrong?
Oh, man, I don't know exactly if you're wrong, but I know Joe Walsh is wrong. The first thing here we have to understand is that the Democratic Party for the first time has the upper hand against the Republicans. It doesn't seem that way in this country, but polling is now showing us that the majority of this country now views that the Republican Party is too extreme. They've gone too far. We have the Nancy Pelosi decision yesterday, which I think was a fantastic decision. I totally disagree with Joe and sadly
and me
you on this, I think, and you on this decision. Here's the thing. We've had Jim Jordan making a clown act of this country for the last, 4 years now of Donald Trump's president. He doesn't need to be there. He's a witness. He's a participant in this edition of what happened. If you're in court and you're going to have someone coming into the jury and making decisions and having subpoena power and bringing things in, you can't have one of the criminals doing it. You can't do this.
Yeah, but if you're going to use that analogy, what's he been charged with?
He hasn't been charged with anything.
Well, there's a problem.
No, it's not a problem. Right now where he's at, what Jim Jordan's done, is he put himself into a box. He sat there with the seditionists. He endorsed it. He sat next to the signs and did it, and now he doesn't get to be on the committee. They can cry and whine all they want to, but they're not in power now. They have no power in this. We tried to have it bipartisan. They voted that down. We tried to do an agreement with them in the meantime of it. They wouldn't do that. And when we basically said, let's not make this thing a clown car, they took their marbles and went home. And you and me on this show, we've gone back to back and back all the time about wanting the Democrats to fight. We don't want them to hold our coat. We want them to be in the alley smashing bottles. Nancy Pelosi just smashed a bottle into the alley. She's kicking them off the committee. She's not putting up with the garbage anymore. She's not going to deal with it. And the Democrats, for the first time, we actually have the polling to back it up. This is bad for them. This is bad for the Republicans, and this is their Benghazi. They spent how much money, how many millions of dollars on Benghazi hearings? You want to talk about not moving the needle? That did move the needle. That caused Obama to lose. That caused us to lose a lot of faith in the Republican voters and weakness and everything else. That's what this is. We have to have these meetings, these hearings, and we have to be able to expose the truth as we want to expose it and push it out there. And if they don't want to be participants in it, then they're not going to be participants in it. But at the end of the day, we still have to get this thing done, and we have to move it forward. But politically, it's a smart move.
I'm going to disagree with you, but had John Boehner back during the Benghazi hearing said we're not going to put Linda Sanchez or Adam Schiff on the committee for whatever reason, we're not going to put Elijah Cummings or Adam Smith on. We're not going. You would have lost your mind.
Were any of them sitting in Benghazi instigating the terrorists to kill the ambassador and posting tweets about the speaker being removed from the galleries along with MGT and everything else? No. That's the thing is, back then, I would have lost my mind because they were members of Congress and they deserved to be there. Jim Jordan participated in this. He was a part of this. He helped organize it, basically. He incited the riot. Of course he doesn't get to be a part of it. And absolutely. No seditionists allowed in this. And that's the problem that's happening in this country right now. Is we have too many members of Congress and too many members of the right who are corrupted, working with basically other foreign governments to propagate false narratives, disinformation, lying to the American people. And no, they shouldn't be on these committees. This is a completely different time. And this is a much, much more serious issue than what happened in Benghazi. Much more. This is an attack on the United States Capitol. That hasn't happened since 1812. And the problem on this one is that Jim Jordan was one of the members who were basically waving these guys on and cheering for him with megaphones about 15 minutes before it happened.
No, we don't disagree on that. In fact, Liz Cheney, reportedly said, you're the blame for this, with a couple of expletives, I guess. And look, I'll tell you, I would have loved to have seen that exchange. I just think this was a mistake, because the messaging, even before it started, even before this starts, is that this is a partisan endeavor.
They're always going to say that. Even if they had been on the committee, they would have said that. No matter what, you're going to have it be in a partisan endeavor. That's their messaging. That's what they're going to push. It's time for the Democrats to have their backbone, and it seems like they have it. It seems like Nancy Pelosi finally is having it, where we're able to say, like, you guys are going to say whatever message you want to. We're going to go to the truth here. And it is going to be bipartisan. We're still going to have Liz Cheney on this committee. Was it Adam is looking like he's going to be on it? It's up to the Republicans here of what they want to do, what side of history they want to be on. And they have firmly decided that they want to be on the side of the extreme, the terrorism, domestic terrorists and foreign interference from other countries.
Do you think you're going to get 5 Republicans to go against leadership and sit on the panel?
Probably not, no.
I mean, for me, in the perfect world, you would get people of conscience who would be willing to come forward and fill those spots, so that, for the good of the country, that this does have both sides being represented. Because look, I knew weeks before that McCarthy was going to put Jim Jordan on that, because he's their attack dog. And I believed back then that this was going to be a ploy to do exactly what Nancy Pelosi did.
What is this both sides crap that everybody keeps talking about? They're carrying Trump flags. They killed police officers. They gouged their eyeballs out, 170 brain injuries, severe trauma, and they're attacking them on Fox News right now. This isn't a both sides issue. This is Republicans have gone too extreme, and they've committed terrorist acts. This isn't a both sides. They don't get to deserve to have both sides. And that's the posture the Democrats have right now.
So that's the message then. Just so I'm clear, you believe that's the message Democrats are putting forth?
I think that's the message that they're putting forth right here, yeah.
Now, if that is the message, I'm with you. If the Republican Party as a whole is the party of terrorism, if they're the terrorists, if we're going to take that position, then yeah, okay, then we've got to convict the party.
Yep. And I mean, that's what's happening right now. I mean, like Nancy Pelosi, when she made this decision, she knew the implications of what was going to happen. She knew that the Republicans were going to run on this and saying that this is a partisan circus and everything else. But Jim Jordan being on this committee, it's the same thing. They're going to send the exact same message. Now it's time for us to stand up and say, this is Trump, and you guys all support this guy. You guys refused to impeach him the second time. You guys didn't stand up. You guys didn't impeach him the first time. You guys allowed him to grow. You guys basked in his, shadow of, everything he was doing. You guys reaped all the rewards from it. And here we are now where people are attacking the country. Just the other day, the FBI sent out a report saying for members of Congress that the radicals, radical domestic terrorists, or whatever you want to call it here, we're planning to commit more acts of terrorism against the United States and members of Congress. And we just saw a couple days ago again, what was it? A guy was arrested for about to firebomb the Minnesota Democratic headquarters. If we're not going to actually call this what it is, which is, terrorism, and the Republicans in Congress are enabling it, allowing it, and inciting it, then I don't know where we are. And so, going into this committee and telling the truth about what happened to the American people. By the way, they can call it partisan all they want to, but at the end of the day, I have a son, he's 10 years old. He's going to read the history books. The truth has to come out no matter what. And they're going to call it partisan, they're going to do whatever, but you can't hide from the eyes of history. And when we look back, 50 years from now at this, all the Republican antics and all the Democratic antics, my messaging and their messaging and my videos that I put out, the videos that they put out, no one's going to remember. They're going to remember what really happened. They're going to remember the truth of what this is if we do it, if we do this thing right. And we have to. They're trying to eradicate the KKK from history books in Texas right now. Like, we have to make sure that history remembers what happened here and it can't be partisan hackery. You can't have shirtless Jim Jordan running out there, jacketless Jordan, yelling and screaming and being a moron. We have serious things to do in this country. He's not a serious person.
No, whether he's serious or not, I think I still believe putting him there and letting the American people see just how ludicrous he can be. I still think is and we're not going to agree on this.
You don't think that they've seen that already and made their decision? They don't care. The Republicans in the party, they don't care. He's been doing this for 4 years. They crashed an intelligence committee hearing, and went in and him and Gates and everybody else. They've been doing this for years. It's just they've already made their decision. This is about the truth. It's not about Jim Jordan. It's about getting to the bottom of this thing, and and he at the end of the day was part of it.
Well, we're going to see how it plays out. I have serious concerns going forward. But again, we'll see how this plays. Like everything, I did want to get your thoughts. What's that?
I was laughing.
Oh, no, I mean, look, both of us are right and both of us are wrong on this, and because neither of us are the ones who pulled the trigger and made the decision. Ultimately, we're going to either say Nancy Pelosi was 100% right or she was wrong, and that's
what would you do?
History's
for me, I would have done the same thing. Yeah, I would have made the same decision she did, of course. But so on your side of it, you would have put Jim Jordan on here and basically kind of let him run amok. And
no, I wouldn't have let him run amok because someone has a gavel. And you still have Liz Cheney to put him in his place, and you still have the ability to have his shenanigans and his show being viewed by the American people. And I seem to think that, or at least I believe, or at least I want to believe, that we're still not completely moronic and we haven't completely lost our minds, and that when we see idiocy that we recognize it.
I don't know, man. Did you see Donald Trump those 4 years?
Yes.
he told us to drink bleach, and 72 million Americans voted for him.
Yeah. Well,
I don't have faith in the fact that they can't see a moron and vote against it. I think that they see someone who they perceive as tough and are going to vote for him.
You're probably right there. But speaking about the elections, your state could be the next blue state. You're from Florida. The way things are looking, Florida could be the next blue state. As what do you guys? Almost half of the new coronavirus cases that are coming out.
Man, I hope that it's bad. I mean, here's the thing down here is, no one's wearing a mask. When I go to places, I went to a tiki bar a couple weeks ago, and I was walking in, and I had a group of people tell me, "Don't you know that the coronavirus is over?" And I asked them, I said, "Did you guys get vaccinated?" And they said, "No, we're not getting vaccinated. We're not sheeple." That's what we're facing here down in Florida, and it's everywhere. You have Ron DeSantis, which thank God we have Nikki Fried running, and she's actually someone who's going to, really make a lot of noise. She's going to be one of the future stars of the Democratic Party. But she's down here and she's hitting it hard. But we have not just that, but we have the algae blooms. We have, fish dying by, by the millions right now. I mean, the tourist industry is going to get hit so bad. The fishing industry, it's not just the coronavirus. I mean, they're killing everything, even the wildlife down here. And you have Marco Rubio, who's up in 2022. He's a complete idiot, and he's not doing anything about this. He's not saying anything. You got Ron DeSantis, who won't declare a state of emergency, and there really is a state of emergency, both for coronavirus and for the wildlife and the algae blooms that are happening. We're not prepared on any level for anything. So, I mean, if we become a blue state, it's going to be because of the idiocy of the United States Senator from Florida and the governor.
Yeah, well, right around the time you're going to become a blue state, you'll be an underwater state.
Yeah, and a complete dead wildlife state with no tourism. Because
we're still not doing anything on the climate, which again I keep coming back to while we're talking about January 6th and we're talking about the committee that's coming up. We're not getting that infrastructure bill passed through fast enough. I'm hoping it passes. I want to get if you're a handicapper, what do you put in the chances of getting both the bipartisan bill that Republicans claim they believe in and the reconciliation bill through?
That's actually a really good point. When Biden became president, and you heard me on the show, before during the race, I was a little bit iffy about him. I didn't know how he was going to do on the campaign, and I sure as heck didn't know how he would do in the White House. But he has really done a great job of finding ways to make things work and get things done. He's passed a lot of historic bills so far. The infrastructure bill, I think that there's going to be some negotiations that have to happen. Mitt Romney is running one of the leads on that. which, he's saying, I don't agree with him on much, but I do agree with him on, some of the ways that he views the infrastructure bill, but also politics, I think we have a chance. I really do. And I think that Biden and the way that he's doing his politicking is exactly what we needed. And what Joe Walsh said before about Americans voting against Donald Trump and for Biden, I don't 100% agree with that. I think that America was tired and they were looking for hope again. I think that they voted for Joe Biden, and I think that they voted for him because he, first off, looks and acts like a president, and second, he actually has the ability to get things done. He's talking about working together, civility, coming together in the middle. I don't think that they just voted against Donald Trump. The Democrats, they were always going to vote against Donald Trump. He didn't get a bunch of Republicans to vote against Trump. He got a bunch of Republicans to vote for the economy, to vote for the future, and to vote for, decency again. And, so I think Biden's going to be able to get this thing done. I have high hopes.
So you think both of them are going to get through? Because that was the question. What do you think the chance of getting them both done?
Yeah, I don't want to say any kind of guarantees on it,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because Morgan Stanley's saying you're going to get one or the other. You're not getting both.
If we get one or the other, I hope it's the infrastructure bill. I just last night I saw China just released their new fastest train in the world. And so like every other country in their infrastructure, they're investing into it. They're investing in the future and technology. Then you look at our Amtrak trains, so it looks like they came from the 1950s, and we're just not there. So I hope it's the infrastructure bill, but I don't want to say no because Biden's been doing this. He was dealt a really crappy hand, but he's been able to really kind of navigate, the tensions in Congress, the polarization, the hatred that's happening, and been able to still strike deals, and obviously like on the, Jones stuff and everything, when, he was working, he was able to strike deals with the other side too. He worked with Ted Cruz to get the Civil Rights Cold Case Collections Act passed, and Donald Trump signed it. So there's still an ability for us to get this stuff done. It's, we just, we have to be at the table here.
I'm with you.
And we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
I'm right there with you. David, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Maybe next time we'll agree on something.
We usually do. We're usually pretty good.
There you go. I appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Our good friend David Yankovich, top digital strategist in the country. A good guy, but yeah, on this thing, yeah, we're not going to agree. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day brewery workers in San Francisco declared victory after brewery owners gave in to their demands. The demands were as follows: free beer, a closed shop, freedom to live outside the breweries, a 10-hour workday, a 6-day work week, and a board of arbitration. Brewery workers in that city maintained their union loyalty. During the 2 years that followed, the National Brewers Association sought to break the brewers' unions across the nation. But the brewers stood strong in San Francisco. The Brewery Owners Association ordered its affiliated members in San Francisco to fire union workers and replace them with scabs. This led to a 9-month brewer workers strike. The strike was successful. The National Brewers Association finally was forced to capitulate. There have been other more recent brewery strikes, and not just in the United States. In 2010, Carlsberg brewery workers went on strike in Denmark after bosses told the staff they could only drink at lunchtime. The warehouse and production workers in Denmark were rebelling against the company's new alcohol policy. Previously, workers could help themselves to beer throughout the day. from coolers placed around the work sites. According to a company spokesman, the only restriction was that you could not be drunk at work, which was up to each and every one to be responsible. On July 9th, 2015, Polar brewery workers went on strike in Venezuela because the company delayed signing a contract and refused to recognize the union. The 4 Polar breweries make 80% of Venezuela's beer. There's no shortage of beer in that country. Venezuela is one of the 10 largest consumers of beer in the world. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
It's time for America to go back to the future. The future of true greatness, created by people united to build a strong nation for the common good. From the start of our United States, Americans have backed leaders who dared to do big public projects. Jefferson, Lincoln, T.R., F.D.R., Truman, Ike, JFK, and LBJ all dared to achieve bold goals. It's only since Ronald Reagan's government is evil demagoguery that our presidents and lawmakers shrivel to no-can-do mediocrities, unwilling even to try tackling America's big needs or invest in our people's unlimited possibilities. Their failure is why our nation's infrastructure, once world-class, has deteriorated to an embarrassing 16th in the world. It's hard to muster any national pride in chanting, "We're number 16." But surprise, here comes Joe, a lifelong go-slow Democrat, unexpectedly proposing a get-serious, roll-up-our-sleeves $2 trillion package of investments to modernize and extend America's collapsing infrastructure. In addition to roads, bridges, and dams, it gives a long-overdue boost to such needs as rural high-speed broadband and providing affordable child care facilities, all geared to creating good union jobs and lifting local economies. Even more transformative is Biden's Back to the Future method of paying for this Rebuild America agenda by returning to progressive taxation. Instead of the same old no-tax, laissez-faire extremism that Washington has practiced for 40 years, Biden will at long last demand that multinational corporate behemoths stop dodging their tax obligations to America. It's the same fair tax policy that funded our nation's real needs in the past, while also increasing productivity and raising living standards for millions of working families. This is Jim Hightower saying, let's do it again. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here's a fun story. I like this one. Evidently, our FBI has admitted that during the Kavanaugh hearing, you remember when all the allegations of his misconduct and all of the harassment stuff that was going on, that whole debacle of him. I like beer. Remember that? And we were led to believe that it was just this one woman, this Dr. Blasey Ford, who she was trying to thwart his rise to the Supreme Court. Turns out, evidently, the FBI got 4,500 tips on Brett Kavanaugh, but decided, you know what? We're not gonna really look into that. We'll just give it to Trump's lawyer, Don McGahn, and good enough. Because hey, got to get this through. I mean, how bad do you have to be to get 4,500 people who may or may not have known you to come forward and go, no, that guy's bad. Wow. 4,500. And I guess now, will we go back and investigate it now? And is there a way to get this guy off the court if it turns out that he actually did what he was accused? We will find out here to share some thoughts on this and all of the other top stories of the day. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at RawStory. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, happy Thursday.
So what do you make of this? 4,500 tips our FBI didn't bother to look into because, hey, we had a justice to get on the Supreme Court because we needed to get some horrible stuff rammed through.
We almost didn't get Christine Blasey Ford either, because somebody reached out to Dianne Feinstein's office and they just didn't pay attention to it for quite a while. So a lot of this didn't come up whenever we were actually, in the hearings talking about Kavanaugh. The Republicans, you're finding out from some of the books that are being written about the Trump administration in that last year or so, is that a lot of Republicans came to Trump and asked him to pull the nomination, Mitch McConnell being among them, and said, this guy is never going to get through. He's terrible. Let's get rid of him. And Trump actually stood behind him and fought for him. And then Kavanaugh didn't help him by giving him the presidency. And so Trump's really pissed about it. So, I mean, this guy we knew at the time that there were some other people that were coming forward. It all just happened so fast. Yeah. And I think that was part of what they wanted, is that they knew that they had to fast track this thing. And they had, control of the Senate, and they could do it.
Now, is there any chance?
There were a lot of stories. There were stories too at the time from from people that that go to church with him, that go to the country club with him. There were a lot of stories in the media, and you have to assume that, like, how many of those 4,500 were crank calls, right?
We'll go half.
Even if it was half, I mean, holy crap, that's 2,250 legitimate calls. That's terrifying.
Yeah, and to have the FBI go, no, we're not gonna bother, doing this. We'll pass it off to the people who want to ram it through.
And I want to find out who made that decision. I think that we deserve to know whose the decision that was, why it was made like that, and were they directed to do that by the president or by the Justice Department?
And here again, this is one of those moments where you go, this is the reason that you need to have these separations. The FBI is not the attack dog or the cover-up agency of an administration. They're the top law enforcement agency in the country. They're supposed to be looking into the crimes, not helping them get covered up.
And the DOJ actually put out a statement today giving further guidelines for how their communication is going to be with the White House. So walking through what the process would be, making sure that it was transparent, all of that stuff. I don't understand why those are not laws to begin with. This shouldn't just be like rules that come and go with each administration. These should be on the books, probably.
Yeah, but again, they're damage done. It's like all of this stuff. Damage done. There's no way of I don't see a way of going back. So we can't undo all of the horrible that he's done, and you're not going to get him off the court. So it appears crime pays.
I don't know necessarily that you couldn't get him off the court. For some reason, it makes me think of, you remember the German Pope Raffensperger? And how he was blamed for a lot of the problems with the pedophilia priests and covering up sex abuse and all of that stuff. And basically it just became such a huge PR storm that he just kind of walked away in disgrace. I do think that it's worth blowing this up, that, talking about every single complaint, every case, and, it doesn't matter whether he's on the court or not. I don't know if he would quit, but I think the most important thing that you can do is tarnish his reputation so that every single opinion that he writes can be linked back to some of his bad behavior. Yeah, but that's what we deserve that in history.
No, and that's, we'll see how that goes. We'll probably be dead by that happens. But for the right now, we're stuck with the horrible. We're stuck with crime paid. The former guy got what he wanted.
I wonder if you can serve on the court if you end up in jail. Like, can we just follow him and make sure that if he has a DUI or something?
Yeah, that.
He loves the beer. He loves to drink.
We could send him beer. There we go. Let's move on. As I'm sure you know, the Delta variant of the coronavirus is now rearing its ugly head. You've got 3 states now that make up about 40% of all of the new cases. Florida leading the way and in a massive way. Looks like bad times for the unvaccinated states.
And unvaccinated people. You're starting to see now people's children are dying. And these are like, there are kids who are 5 and 6 and 10 who can't get vaccinated. And because their parents are idiots and terrible people, they're basically giving a virus to their children, and their kids are dying because their immune systems aren't strong enough to handle it.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that's really horrifying. That happened in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district this week. I think it was a 5-year-old boy who died of COVID because his family wasn't vaccinated. And when she was asked about, I don't know if it was necessarily that or just people dying of COVID, she laughed about it. And that is a level of evil that you don't really see that often. Yeah. I mean, usually that kind of stuff is covered up and hidden away and it's whispered and behind closed doors. And she just loves to bring that hate and craziness out for the whole world to see.
No, I mean, it makes me feel bad because I've taken the position where, if you didn't get vaccinated and you get sick and you die, good, bye. But these kids, they didn't do anything. They're the innocent victims in this because mom and dad are morons. And look, I've been seeing some of the statements from doctors saying, I don't necessarily blame the people, because when they tell the story about how someone's on their deathbed and they're like, can you give me the vaccine? And they're like, no, a little late for that. I'm of the mindset, good, you made that choice, but these doctors are going, look, it's all this misinformation. It's Fox News. It's all of these anti-vax groups who have convinced these people that there's a chip in it. My wife started going back for massages, and the woman who does the massages said she's lost a bunch of clients because she's vaccinated. They're afraid that they're going to get sterile, or the one said that you've been marked with the mark of the beast, and just this insanity where you go, these people actually do exist and they're around us.
Yeah. One of the other things I read among the statistics from the Kaiser Center is that it isn't just people who are vaccine hesitant. There are people who are vaccinated who are still vaccine hesitant, who got vaccinated, but they feel really uncomfortable about it. So for a lot of people who did get vaccinated and they're like, hey, everybody get vaccinated. We're here, we're healthy, and we don't have to wear stupid masks anymore. We're being the evangelicals to the vaccine, but there are so many people who are still hesitant, who were vaccinated, who aren't willing to do that. And those are the people who have tons of friends, right? Who are anti-vaxxers or who are making up conspiracy theories or believing conspiracy theories. And so, the one thing that they're saying is that, if people in your life can explain to you why it's important and they're the ones who are asking you, then it changes minds. It's not some famous person doing a press conference at the White House or Lady Gaga doing a commercial. It's about person-to-person contact with people that you trust in your life.
Right.
So I think everybody who is vaccinated, who believes in being vaccinated, please talk to all of your unvaccinated friends and explain why it's so important and tell them that you don't want them to die.
Yeah, I'm probably going to take some heat for this, but if you're a white person, there's no reason for you not get vaccinated. I understand some black people being hesitant, and there was the story just recently, I'm sure you saw it, of the couple who said, no, we're not getting anything from the government, citing the Tuskegee syphilis experiments they did back in the 60s. I get that. There's a part of me goes, yeah, I can see that because there's an example of us doing some really bad things to people. But if you're a white person, there's no examples of that.
No, the only example is like what crazy movies you've watched, whatever Hollywood has made up and what you've created in your head or listened to Tucker Carlson say. So I think that hopefully if we just get more people telling their friends and explaining it to people. We've had 36 million people across the planet who have been vaccinated at this point. So you would think that if there was something sketchy going on, something would turn up in those 36 million people, right? Something.
There would be something. You're absolutely right. Now, I did find one of your stories really comical, and you're not generally a comedy writer, but the Ronnie Jackson story I found really comical. Now, Ronnie Jackson is running for a state rep or a rep position in Texas. The former Trump doctor, basically booted because of his substance abuse problems and some other questionable decisions. This is a doctor. This is somebody who's supposed to have really a high level of education. Somebody we're supposed to believe. Evidently was whining that nobody ever asks Democrats if they're vaccinated. Which hello, the Democrats are the ones saying, "Hey, go get vaccinated."
This is my favorite story of the day. And actually, this is how I started my day, right? Like, this was one of the first stories that I wrote this morning. And it was so funny because he was just so whiny. I mean, I want to use the B word, but he was whiny. And just being like, why did you people talk to Democrats about it? And it's like, oh, we did. Back in May, there was a story about how 100% of the Democratic caucus was vaccinated because they felt like it was important. So everybody already knows that Democrats are vaccinated, and it's y'all that are the ones that we're trying to encourage, people like you. And Chief Scalise actually came out and announced that he finally got vaccinated after being against it for so long. And then he was like, I think maybe it's okay, and I think maybe you guys should think about getting vaccinated. And it's like, where you been, bro? We've been talking about this for months now. So it's, you're very, very late to the party. I guess we should just embrace that you showed up at all. But at the same time, where you been?
No, I mean, I look at Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell from the very beginning should have been a cheerleader for this because he's a polio survivor. Something I just learned about him. I didn't know this before. Maybe it was common knowledge and I just didn't know or didn't care. But now I'm going, why weren't you out in front of this?
And what's interesting is if you look back on 2020, Mitch McConnell was really nowhere around.
Nowhere.
And it's because he's a polio survivor and he was terrified of getting the virus and was being very cautious, wearing a mask, staying at home, social distancing, doing all of the things that Democrats were telling people to do. Mitch McConnell was doing because he believes it. He believes in science. And the problem is that, Donald Trump hates Mitch McConnell. And so it's hard to now try and claim that Mitch McConnell should be the messenger of this because it's not like any of these people are going to trust him anyway. So, I mean, it's hard because it seems like now people like Sean Hannity, the only reason that they care about it is because his viewers are dying. It's Republicans that are dying. So folks who are Republicans who are now starting to promote the vaccine, I just wonder if it's because they saw numbers in their district and they're like, oh crap, all of my voters are dying.
Or the advertisers are going, hey, you can't kill off the people who are buying our stuff.
Yeah. Or, I mean, and a lot of people too, if you're advertising on TV and you're connected with somebody who's an anti-vaxxer, when the rest of the country, like that's a very small percentage. Anti-vaxxer people are very small percentage. They're very loud,
right? But
there aren't that many of them. The rest of us, like we are the majority. And so you have these companies that are just like, well, I don't want to be associated with that because it's just not a good PR move.
Now, what I'm finding interesting though is, you look at the fact that there's so many Republicans now running around screaming, "My choice, my body." Well, where were you? Where were you before?
That's my favorite line ever. And I think Meghan McCain used it a couple of weeks ago. And I replied to one of her tweets and was like, I would just love to welcome you to the pro-choice movement. And this whole idea of medical privacy, people keep talking about HIPAA and that somehow protects you from being asked if you're vaccinated, which is not what it does at all, not even close. But this idea of medical privacy is what Roe v. Wade is all about, that the government has no business, asking about your medical history or your medical practices or, what procedures you've had or not had, and so all of these Republicans who purport to be small government people, for years now we've talked about how they want a government so small that you can just stick it up in my uterus. And now they're just like, oh, my body, my choice.
Yeah, it's quite amusing. While simultaneously, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you saw this story in Alabama, where a district attorney, evidently a woman, went and had a baby, and they tested the baby for it didn't have any symptoms of whatever the drug addiction thing is, but they did a screening and the kid showed having some opioids in its system. And this is a woman who's had chronic, pain for years, was involved in a car accident, and her doctor gave her a legal prescription. She was taking legal prescription medicine at a time when she was pregnant for the pain that she was in. And now they're trying to throw her in jail for using these drugs while she was pregnant, under the guise that while 8 months pregnant, she didn't tell the pharmacist that she was pregnant.
Which, I mean, if it's the same pharmacy that you've been going to, you would think that they would know. Also, 8 months pregnant, you're as big as a house.
Yeah.
I don't know how you hide that. Like, you would have to be have a very large bag in front of you. I don't know. Maybe they thought that she was trying to shoplift a watermelon. I got nothing.
No, but this is one of those things where, I've got 2 daughters and I worry about their future. I worry about, what this country is going to turn into when you've got these overzealous district attorneys and these Republican states who are moving these kind of crazy, really invasive personal laws on the books. It's troubling times.
So these are the kind of lawsuits I actually welcome. When it's really absurd and very clear that this is not going to fly in court, I think these are the ones that you want to try and send up to the Supreme Court. What people who are anti-choice and have worked a long time in the anti-choice movement to try and not just reduce the number of abortions, they just want to stop it. They don't care about reducing it. They don't care about children. They don't care about unborn children. They just want to make it illegal. And those folks are very strategic about which lawsuits that they escalate to the court. Stuff like what's happening in Alabama, that's not going to go well. It doesn't even matter if it's a state judge or a local judge who even decides that she's somehow in the wrong. It doesn't matter, because that will escalate to the federal courts very quickly, and that'll be shot down. And then there'll be precedent. There'll be a nice legal precedent that we can cite in other court cases.
Yeah, I got to tell you.
The other ones I worry about.
Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Covid Barrett. I am certain of nothing anymore. I'm just not. Also, one of my other favorite stories today, evidently Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. This is, I guess, one of my, again, the persecution, the victimhood of Christian conservatives is just mind-blowing, because evidently this guy believes that you can't pray for someone's health because of the HIPAA laws. I've read the HIPAA sheets they give it out at the doctor's office. I don't remember praying for someone being a violation.
That's the thing about this whole HIPAA conspiracy theory, and this is a Marjorie Taylor Greene conspiracy theory. Like, we're talking about Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. But he got this idea from Marjorie Taylor Greene on Newsmax or OAN or whatever the heck she's going on spouting these things. And every person in the country who's ever been to a doctor who has read the stupid HIPAA form that they have to sign, and maybe you've only read it like once or twice, because after a while it's all says the same thing and you just sign it, but at least people have read it like once or twice, and people know that that's not what this is. At least rational people do. So this idea that they're making up things like, I can't ask you if you're vaccinated, or we can't know whether or not you're in the hospital for COVID or whatever. That doesn't mean that you can't pray for somebody. And that's what MSNBC's Garrett Haake basically came back with. He was like, I don't know if that's true. I, for one, would welcome any prayers that anybody wants to give me, and I would pray for you too, Senator.
I pray that you stop lying.
Yeah, I pray that you stop making stuff up and trying to pretend like, somehow Christians are the victim of the government, because clearly that's not the case.
No, this is a good place, and this is because I have a theory. I have a theory about Christians, because they're the ones who want us to plaster the 10 rules everywhere. This would have been a good place to bring up those 10 rules. Say this one right here, thou shalt not bear false witness. This is for you. Would you like me to leave it here so you can remember not to lie? Because ultimately, HIPAA's been around since 1996. This is 25 years old. No, wait a minute. Yeah, it's 25 years old now. We've all seen this, and I don't remember there ever being a no praying for you.
Yep, never happened. And
Crazy.
The fact that they're trying to say it now, that they've just made it up, it's crap. It's disingenuous, and I'm glad that somebody called him out on it. It would never happen on Fox News. If he goes on Fox News, they're not going to correct him on that.
Yeah.
So.
Finally, I got to get the answer on this. Evidently, Mitt Romney has told the authors of the most recent book that's come out on the former guy's term that he couldn't figure out why Giuliani would destroy his reputation. Well, I gotta imagine my theory. There's a lot of dirt. There's a lot of dirt there.
My theory is that he's drunk all the time.
Okay.
And he doesn't even know what he's doing. And I think there were a couple of, who was it? Somebody did a really interesting commentary on Giuliani where they said, I think it was Bender. I think it was in Michael Bender's book, which says that Giuliani basically is so hungry for attention, so desperate for it, so desperate for the spotlight again, that he literally is willing to do anything that it takes to get there. And you combine that with, starting happy hour at 9 a.m. and going all the way through 6, then that's probably how he ends up humiliating himself a lot.
Yeah, and throw in a couple of those, the thing with Sacha Baron Cohen, a couple of those, uncomfortable situations that just happen to find their way on tape. And here's a guy easily blackmailed and easily pushed in the wrong direction. And oh, by the way, he was stumbling that way anyway. I can see it.
Yeah, and I respect Mitt Romney for being so far removed from that world that he doesn't know or understand. But, Mitch should turn on HBO sometime and watch the Borat sequel.
There you go. Fun stuff all around. But Sarah, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing the great work you do over there at RawStory. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at RawStory, rawstory.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving more time. The Rick Smith Show.
In one of the world's wealthiest nations, advanced infrastructure was no match for Mother Nature.
Catastrophic floods in Germany show nowhere is safe from our worsening climate emergency. Parts of Amazon rainforest now emit more CO2 than it absorbs. Plus,
the NASA study predicts flooding will sometimes occur in clusters lasting a month or longer in the 2030s.
High tide flooding hit a record in the U.S. last year. NASA warns it's going to get much, much worse.
All of that moon wobbling and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
California is in the grip of a drought, and that's causing Sacramento's drinking water to taste like dirt. But one city official assured residents it might not taste great, but it's still safe to drink. And was immediately sued for copyright infringement by Michelob Ultra.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, boy, howdy, you are right. Nowhere is safe. What an horrific sight we all saw in Germany last week.
Yes, it was. As we go to air, nearly 200 are confirmed dead in catastrophic flooding in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands as rescuers search for hundreds that are still listed as missing. Days of torrential rain triggered wildly destructive flash floods that swept away buildings, destroyed communications and transportation, and displaced thousands. German officials say the historic floods far exceeded the conditions that their flood control systems were designed for, and exposed flaws and gaps in the country's emergency alert systems. The disaster hit just days after the European Union announced its ambitious roadmap to cut carbon emissions that cause dangerous man-made climate change, and the floods have pushed climate action to the front of national elections to replace retiring Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Good.
The influence of man-made climate change in this specific event will take time to determine, but the floods are just the latest in a wave of extreme weather disasters around the world, including record heat and forest fires in Russian Siberia, and Canada and the U.S. West grappling with historic drought and record-smashing high temperatures that cooked fruit on trees. In the U.S., fire crews are battling more than 70 major fires. Oregon's Bootleg Fire, the largest in the U.S. so far this year, has burned more than 530 square miles and is so hot that it is disrupting the atmosphere. In California, utility giant Pacific Gas and Electric announced that its aging equipment may have sparked the Dixie Fire.
May? Are those people still in business?
Experts say the wave of extreme disasters shows that even the world's richest nations are not prepared for cascading consequences of climate change, underscoring the need for governments to move quickly on adaptation projects to build infrastructure resilience against intensifying extreme weather disasters, even as they also cut greenhouse gas emissions. Here's Penn State University climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann in an interview with Democracy Now!
The fact that we're in both of these countries right now are witnessing the devastating impacts of climate change really drove home the point that we have to act now. Dangerous climate change is here. Catastrophic climate change is here. And at this point, it's a matter of how bad we're willing to let it get.
Oh, I fear we are willing to let it get much worse.
Well, those consequences are arriving earlier than predicted. New research published in the journal Nature shows that parts of the Amazon rainforest in South America now emit more carbon dioxide than they absorb, primarily caused by deforestation, fires, and global warming.
Let me repeat that. They now emit more carbon than they absorb. The Amazon used to be our carbon sink. It would keep us safe. It would suck up all the carbon. Now it's putting off more than it is taking in.
NOAA announced that sunny day flooding, or routine flooding at high tide, hit a record along U.S. coasts over the last year due to rising sea levels. And NASA, in a new first-of-its-kind study, warned that a natural shift in the moon's orbit around the Earth, combined with rising sea levels, will cause high tide flooding to jump 5 to 10-fold in the mid-2030s, hitting some areas near daily.
Now, of course, that would happen whether there was climate change on Earth or not. This is just making it all much worse, correct?
Yes. But there is some good news.
Good.
The nation of Greenland has suspended all oil exploration because of climate change, with its environmental minister explaining, quote, "The future does not lie in oil. The future belongs to renewable energy, and in that respect, we have much more to gain."
Nice.
Finally, in that Democracy Now! Interview, Dr. Mann says there is hope in taking action.
There is still time. Don't let the doomers convince you it's too late to do anything about climate change. That leads us down the same path of inaction as outright denial. And the forces of inaction would love nothing more than for environmental progressives to remain on the sidelines because they're convinced it's too late to do anything. It isn't too late, but we have to act, and we have to act now.
Oh, it's too late. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, who would have known that Slowhand was crazy? Evidently, Eric Clapton has said that he will not play any venue that requires vaccinations. But it's not surprising, to be honest. He and Van Morrison came out with a song last year, Stand and Deliver, that included the lyrics, do you want to be a free man? Do you want to be a slave? Dick Turpin wore a mask too. And I had to actually look up who Dick Turpin was. He was 18th century Robin Hood is what they claim. He was hung for stealing from rich people. But yeah, I didn't realize Clapton was crazy. He's now put out that any venue that mandates people, protect others around them, he will have the right to cancel the show. He used the word discriminated. We will not have discriminated audiences. How about dangerous audiences? And here's the thing. I'll bet you there's a distance between him and the unvaccinated masses. I'll bet you on that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So I actually like Eric Clapton until now. This is kind of disconcerting.
Well, everybody's getting all over the board with this. They just had a mandatory, I think it was France had a mandatory a vaccine passport, they call it, for certain venues. Eventually, you're going to have one to fly. In a sense, you have to have one in certain cases to fly, international now. So, you're going to see it. I think when it comes to, do you have to have a vaccination to enter a store or something? That actually could be a store policy. But, these things are going to be debated. They're going to be tried in court, all kinds of things. So until then, people are going to be all over the board where they're at on it.
But the thing is, this is one of those weird moments where I go, okay, there's part of me that goes, I don't want people, I'm a little uncomfortable with mandating things to the point where we're going to start holding people down and jabbing them. I'm really uncomfortable with that. But this idea that, he's coming out and says, well, we're not going to let people be discriminated against, without going, hey, stupid people, go get vaccinated so none of us have to worry about this.
Right. I think, it's his freedom to, do what he wants and everything. But it's just kind of a strange thing, I guess. He's got a problem with it. Then just, don't play there. But I also would not like to see people disencourage, if I want to use that word, getting a vaccination.
I want hold a concert and say, everybody come and get vaccinated while you're here.
The CDC mask thing, in my opinion, like I said on your show yesterday, it did that. It did that. Yeah. It really took away incentives. You got to have a mask, and then, honor system, and all of a sudden everybody was vaccinated that I saw everywhere.
Yeah. I think the number is like 63% across the country. Are we at 63%? I think the number was.
But what I'm saying is, once they said honor system. Yeah, we were 100% vaccinated.
Yeah, everybody,
everybody was vaccinated.
But I think the official number is only like 63%, something like that, isn't it?
Right, it was 58, and at one time it was 42. I think it's, risen. But right now, 40% of the new cases are in 3 states. 40% are in Florida, Texas, and Missouri, and those are the 3 states with the lower vaccination rates. And they're accounting for 40% of all cases in 3 states. Of course, then that multiplies. People travel to other states, and there you go. So the states that are behind are a problem. Now, then you can look at the state of New Hampshire, Vermont, which has 82% vaccination rate. If we can get up to that, then you've got herd immunity, and then less problems with the Delta variant.
Right. But here's what I said at the beginning. Those 3 states are going to look good in the blue state category soon.
Mm-hmm. I just hate that it gets down to. I never on this issue could understand how it becomes a political blue state, red state. I know it does. I know policies are based on it. It shocks me.
No, you kill off enough of the Republican voters, they're going to be blue states before we know it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's where I was going. Because
okay, well, I'll let you go there.
No, I mean I don't like it, but it's look, if you're not smart enough to go, there's a safe, easy, effective way to make sure I don't die. I can't always predict if I'm going to step off the curb and get hit by a bus, but this one I can get the vaccine and maybe I don't get hit by that bus.
I mean, if this surge continues, I would think that, more people would get vaccinated just out of the fact when you hear that a neighbor is in the hospital dying. Then, I mean, hopefully in such a bad situation, it will do something good to get more people vaccinated. I would hope.
I'm taking some heat today, Bob. Lots of heat over my position on Nancy Pelosi's decision.
Okay.
Most of my lefty friends, most of the Democrats, all on board with Nancy Pelosi's decision. I still think it was a mistake. Obviously, this will play out. We'll see how it goes. But I'm still standing my ground.
Well, I think it's getting worse, and I'll tell you why. Now the speaker has said, "Well, I'm going to pull in, a former member to bring him in on the commission because he voted to impeach Trump." And I did a show with a really good friend of mine in Wheeling, West Virginia. His show today, and I said, I know how he operates, I know how he thinks. And I was using an example today of one Republican and one Democrat member of Congress that I really just don't like, okay? Don't like them at all. And if I were the speaker, I said, I would, however, not say they can't be on the committee. I wouldn't do it. And especially get into the other party's business. Number two, the speaker is and by the way, for people that know me, and I was up on the Hill, I got along with Nancy Pelosi. I'm not a Nancy Pelosi hater. She's not dumb with politics, or she wouldn't be where she's at, speaker twice, okay? So I just wanted to get that clear. But on this issue, she's wrong, because now there is going to be a food fight about, the commission and the politics of the commission, not the substance of it. The other thing today I saw that was an abomination, CNN did a fact check, and Jane Campbell, who's head of the D.C. Historical Capital Society, had said, well, the police board's really responsible. They're the ones responsible for security. Well, that's really not accurate. The fact check is not accurate. It's the Speaker's office and McCarthy's office. So if they go after Speaker Pelosi on security, they're going to be just as vulnerable on McCarthy.
Right.
But now that issue's out there. So they're going to start these debates. Jordan from Ohio is going to, bring in, who let the security fall to take it away from the issue of Trump and put it on the issue of, who let security fail internally, and they should have done something, et cetera. I'm just arguing that they have now a debate that isn't necessary. And I just think, again, it's a bad move. They've given the Republicans an issue. They've given the Republicans a microphone. The Republicans are going to milk this thing all over the place.
Yeah, and look, even the media that is called liberal media is still going to give them equal time to get their message out too, because that's what we do. It's
the what I call the sexy, spicy stuff. They're two parties now arguing over a commission of that dealt with the insurrection and security for 10,000 people that work in that complex. And sure, the media is going to cover them, and the Republicans are going to come up with visuals, and they're going to do things, and they're going to have protests, and it's just I think it takes away a lot for how they could do the commission. Let the people come on. I don't care who it is, and let them argue and make their points. And some of it will be so ridiculous that the commission would, in the end, I think, score some points.
That's where I'm at. I mean, you let Jim Jordan be as ridiculous as he can possibly be, and then everybody just kind of look at him and go, "What is wrong with you?" And then Liz Cheney go, "You're effing responsible for this." That's what I want to see.
Right, and also if they bring in, key people that were there that day, not just the management of Capitol Hill Police, but some of the policemen themselves to tell their story. What are they going to do? Attack the police? For what? What good is it? But it'll happen.
Yeah.
And they're going to look bad for it.
Yeah. See, I see right there. I'm with you on this, and this is, anytime it looks like you're trying to quash someone else's speech, anytime you're trying to silence someone, the other side, even if they are 100% wrong, because the response I keep getting is, well, they were part of the treason. They were part of the insurrection. Jim Jordan was cheerleading it, and he was, but you haven't charged him with anything. There's just a whole bunch here I'm uncomfortable with.
Right, and then here's the point. If somebody wants to act like an idiot, then it's their right to act like an idiot, and then you counter them. You counter them. Yeah. I mean, this isn't the first time they've had people on the committees that will be bombastic, and like I say, and now if they go over their time limit and things like that, or do something completely out of order, yeah, you can boot them out or take a recess and they have to sit out or something. But right now, let people come on, no matter which walk of life they come from, and then have at it. You make your points, and that's where it ends. I'm in shock that this has happened, because it just changes the entire issue. I don't care what anybody says; it changes the entire scope of this issue now.
But what do you say to the person? And I just had a guest on recently who said that this is the Democrats showing their strength. Because one of the things that I argue about all the time is I think the Democrats a lot of times are spineless. If there's a street brawl going on, they'll offer to hold your coat. What do you say to the argument was, this is them, putting down your coat and, getting in there and throwing some swings?
The Democrats can, be good at what they need to be doing by going on the committee and giving it right back to Jim Jordan and others. That's how they can do what they're needing to be to be doing. Number two, let's look at a big picture here. I think that the Democrats do have to have a spine when it comes to at least one issue, because of the way the Senate runs. Reconciliation bills, what you put in those reconciliation bills, and then you have a House that goes along and you make law. You put the other three parts of the infrastructure bill in there. You put in what you want. You defend it. You're going to get, of course, people after you, and the Republicans will be screaming about it. Now that's toughness. That's being smart and being tough and being aggressive. Not to say you can't have a member on a committee. That's not the right aggressive.
No, I'm with you. But here's the thing. I hope that they've learned, and I think Joe Biden has learned from the Obamacare nonsense that, almost immediately as soon as they passed it, people were backing away from it. I think you've got to get out, as you said, you got to get out there and, move your legislation, defend the heck out of it, and go that direction. I'm with you there.
Right, because once you take an opposite direction, then you're kind of trapped. It's like when in 1996 we were all morphed into Newt Gingrich on the Republican side, right?
Yep.
And the members started saying, I kind of don't like something. Well, what don't you like? Well, I don't like. Well, if you don't like that, are you going to vote for him for speaker? And it became endless, And if you took a different tact to it and said, okay, fine, because I used to say on my opponent, you want to run against Newt, move to Georgia. We're in the state of Ohio. But if you get into that trap of saying this and backing off and then saying that, you're into this trap you can't get out of. And that's what happened on the health care. Right away, the first slings and shots came on it, and people said, maybe that's bad. Well, no, I voted for it. People don't have health care. If we need to tweak something down the road, fine. But I voted for something good, and you leave it at that.
I'm there. And for me, this infrastructure bill is a big part of that. I'm of the mindset, and I've had a bunch of my liberal friends say, well, Rick, these things are hard to move. It's been years in the making. Even the big infrastructure bills of the past took a long time. And I'm going, yeah, but we don't have a lot of time to move something, because the Republicans are doing what they do. They're running out the clock, man. We're already further down the road than I would have liked this to have been already. I'd like to have the signing ceremony yesterday. But they're talking maybe October, which I think is too late.
And you know what happens in January? You have an election cycle beginning, and things freeze. And I agree with you. not over who sits on a commission. It's doing the infrastructure bill and everything else they want to do. That is boldness. That's when you get tough. That's when you get aggressive. And that's when you make your move and say, I'm sorry you don't like it. You weren't part of the process, but here's what we did, and this is why we did it, and it's good. No, and that's what you do. That's aggressive.
No, right there is a perfect example of what I've been talking about. You know, if you're gonna play tough and throw Jordan, which I don't like Jim Jordan even a little bit, but if you're gonna throw him off the committee, but we're not gonna drive the steamroller on the infrastructure.
Exactly. We'll get hardball with Jim Jordan, but we're not going to wrap everything else there because somebody might yell about the process. But we'll get tough with Jim Jordan. There's the time to get tough, and again, believe me, it's not about Jim Jordan. It's got to be about the big picture.
Exactly. Last question I got for you. Evidently today, a number of protesters arrested in the Senate building. One of them, Representative Hank Johnson of Georgia. They were there, angry and protesting against the Senate's inaction on the voting rights legislation and filibuster reform. I'm guessing this is something we're going to see every Thursday. I mean, because last week I think it was Representative Beatty from Ohio who got arrested.
Yes.
Now Hank Johnson. Is this something you think we're going to see every Thursday?
Well, I think so. And look, I'm not going to call it a gimmick. People will call it a gimmick. But what they're doing, this is what Representative Johnson has done. He's been arrested by Capitol Police on the protest. I mean, technically, look, as a representative, he can go wherever he wants to go, all right? But he then, didn't comply with the Hill Police. A lot of people have done this over the years to make a point. And yes, Representative Joyce Beatty, she's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and she's from Ohio, was arrested on July 15th, and she was participating in a voters' rights protest, and they went inside the Senate Hard Office building. Now, technically, she's a member. She can go in there and do what she wants to walk through and things, but she went in as a protester and refused to leave, so she gets arrested. And it's to make a point, I mean, they're not storming on the floor of the Senate with a torch, They're making a point, and a lot of people have done that over the years. We did it with Stand Up for Steel, went down to the gates, refused to move, and said, do what you want, arrest us if you want. They didn't, but they let us in to see Clinton's people. But,
right.
Normally they will arrest you. And so that's a way you can get your point out there. That's how, they got some publicity on the issue.
Yeah, I'm just like, but I'm like a representative being arrested. I don't understand how. They could do basically whatever they want. As you've said, that it just seemed weird to me, but it is to get attention. It is to do it.
It's to get attention on the issue, and they do that. They don't take them down and, take them to the prison tank in the District of Columbia. So that's not done. It's more of a formality.
I was going to ask you I wonder how long he was arrested. I'm sure it wasn't as long as the other folks who got roundup. I'm sure not.
Yeah, when I went down for the Stand Up for Steel rally, the Sergeant of Arms, Bill Livingood, called me and said, please, you're chairman of the House Administration Committee, please don't go down and get arrested. And I said, well, I'm with the steel union guys, and if we have to, we're going to get arrested. And he said, well, let me know because we're going to come get you in the car. and avoid putting me in what they call the tank, I guess.
Yeah,
so they do that,
yeah, but
usually.
Most of that stuff, as far as my experience has been, most of that stuff's pre-planned well in advance.
Well, it is, and what's interesting when they asked us to move, and we were blocking the gates of the White House with 10,000 people, and then they made a phone call, and the gate opened, and they said, go in. They told me to go in, and I went in, and it was Bill Clinton's guy in there, and he said, what do you want? I said, well, I brought 10,000 of your Democratic friends with me here. I told him. And he said, I got to tell you something. He said, normally we get a phone call ahead of time, and we kind of work with all this. He said, I'm shocked you didn't get arrested. So we didn't pre-plan the arrest or not, but a lot of times it is done. They know they're going to get arrested, and so they won't take them into the regular, lockup.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. Like I said, I won't call it a gimmick. It's a method.
No, you most certainly. It's about getting attention and then maybe jamming up the court system a little bit, which is always fun.
Right, exactly.
A little revenue for the court system. Nothing wrong with that.
Isn't it funny? You don't move, and they'll arrest you, but you can lie to Congress and they let you go.
Yeah, welcome to America.
Yeah, there you go.
Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, good stuff, my friend.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of a number of these things, and, people get arrested, and it's, it usually ends up turning into a real pain in the behind, but it is what it is. Good on Hank Johnson. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. A group of labor leaders and members of the Workingmen's Party met in St. Louis. They were there because of the labor strike that had swept the nation. The United States was in the grip of a terrible depression. Railroad workers in Martinsburg, West Virginia, had walked off the job after their wages were slashed. The popular uprising of workers spread to cities like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Chicago. Railroad tracks were ripped out of the ground. Workers rallied and protested, and workers from other industries joined the March of Labor. In St. Louis, the response of workers was even more radical. Many of the workers in the city were German immigrants. Some remembered the working class uprisings of 1848 in Germany. At the St. Louis meeting, they declared the start of the St. Louis Commune, a takeover of the city by working people. They called for the 8-hour day and the end of child labor. On both sides of the Mississippi River, both in St. Louis and East St. Louis, workers began a general strike. Railroad traffic was stopped. It was the first general strike in U.S. history. The workers had taken over St. Louis. 3,000 federal troops were amassed, along with thousands of gun thugs paid for by the railroad tycoons. The workers' rebellion was crushed. The strike committee was arrested, and at least 18 people were killed. Across the nation, 100 people lost their lives in the Great Upheaval of 1877. City leaders scrambled to build armories so they could quickly arm troops in case the workers rose up again. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, some surprising news coming out of the National Labor Relations Board this week. Still a Trump-dominated board right now. The Republicans have more votes than the Democrats on the board. With the chairperson being the Democratic appointee. She's the one who actually wrote this decision. And this is one of those things a couple of years ago I was really worried about. I love Scabby the Rat. If you've been on the picket line and you see the giant 12-foot inflatable rat out there with the little claws, and it's just, there's just something about it that I like. There are a number of places that have one. They've got one out in the Midwest. There's one in New York. Local 19 here locally in our area. They've got one that they take around. And you know what it is. You know that there are scabs on the job because Scabby the Rat is right there. A company in Indiana, this RV trade show company, evidently they ran the Scabby out to this place, and the company went and filed a charge, claiming it was a secondary boycott. And the last guy who was the general counsel, Peter Robb, who was fired on Inauguration Day, way to go, Joe Biden, he was pushing this as a secondary boycott. Well, Wednesday the decision came out, a 3-1 decision, with Trump appointees saying that exterminating Scabby the Rat would be an infringement on free speech, and that scabby gets to live another day. Good on them. They made the right choice for once. Now you go, it's just a little thing, and it is just a little thing. But if you were able to quash this kind of free speech, imagine the rest of the signs, any types of protests outside of any place, having workers who aren't having union members who aren't workers at that place not being able to be on picket lines. It would be just basically shutting down the community. Good on them. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people